Hey everyone, and welcome to this month's GitKraken workshop. Today's workshop is titled Tuning Up Your PR Workflows. And so, what we have for you today are tips and tricks that you can take away today for making the PR process a little bit more efficient and take up less of your precious time. And we're also going to give you a sneak peek into some GitKraken features that are cooking in the kitchen that you will get nowhere else. Before we dive into the session, we'd like to invite you to like and subscribe and do all the YouTube things. It really does help us out. We're no different than other YouTube creators here, and we'd love to continue to roll out more workshops as we progress throughout the year. Now, I'll do you a solid and I'll forward you through some of the setup slides here in the presentation, and let's dive right in.
So, as we've engaged with our users, one theme consistently emerges: the frustration with PR workflows. Many of you have shared how these pain points, like delayed collaboration, the headaches of PR delays and merge conflicts, fragmented visibility across projects, and the constant juggling act of context switching and focus disruption impact your efficiency and ultimately your work satisfaction. These challenges probably resonate with all of us. Justin, let's bring you in. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you've seen? How are you thinking about specifically these challenges before we get into some of the ways that GitKraken can help?
Yeah, so we see the same problems that we hear from users every day here, and that is that a pull request is kind of a necessary step at the end of the development cycle, but it does mean that a lot of times it means that people who are coming in to review code are seeing it for the first time when it's already gone through a bunch of development cycles and it's now at the review phase. So there is this moment where PRs are being used to collaborate, there's conversations going on, there's suggestions being made, and those are happening too late in some cases, right? It can cause a lot of rework if you realize that someone kind of approached the problem the wrong way when it gets to the PR stage. So we want to work on some things to bring collaboration earlier into the process for developers so that they can figure out those things and ultimately make pull requests better at the end. But when we do get to a pull request, there's also a lot of friction there. We see a lot of delays because there's this passing back and forth where developers might not be checking their email all the time or their GitHub all the time, and things will be happening in pull requests. And the fact that we're working asynchronously a lot of times and working in different time zones means that these cycles get really long because it's this passing back and forth. So as much as we can do to avoid that, we think that we can improve the collaboration with devs so that the pull requests don't take so long to complete, so that we minimize merge conflicts but can still resolve them if they come up. And it's really the things that we're going to be showing today around Cloud Patches and Focus View are centered around making the visibility of these items a lot more clear, showing you all the things that are going on across all of your repositories, across multiple repositories for your pull requests, and keeping those flows within the client and within the GitKraken tool so that you don't have to do as much context switching. So I think the next slide kind of leads into that a little bit, and I promise we are going to do some demos. It's not just going to be a slide deck today. But like I was saying, the things that we're going to be showing, Cloud Patches, if you haven't used it yet, we're going to do a quick demo of that to show you how we think it can be really valuable for early collaboration. That kind of passing back of code between developers, maybe a senior dev and a junior dev are passing code back, and they might not have the time to or the availability to pair at the exact same time. We have a really interesting solution that we think solves that. And then everything around the pull request process, right? Knowing what PRs you have that you have to take action on, knowing what stage of the pull request process those are in, and really streamlining the workflows with PRs is where we'll kind of continue on with the Focus View demo that I'm going to do here in just a minute. So yeah, we're going to do some demos. So like I said, we're going to start with Cloud Patches, show Cloud Patches, and something that we put in quotes here as cloud stashing because it's not really a named feature that way, but it's the way that we've seen users using this feature. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming next with Cloud Patches and how those can help your PR workflows. Then we'll show Focus. We have some new things that came out in Focus in the last release, and I'd like to kind of bring you up to speed on what is going on there, and then again, show you a look into the future, give you some ideas of some concepts that we're working on right now that will be coming into the client soon. So with that, I think I'm going to steal sharing from Jonathan here and get into a demo. All right, should all be able to see GitKraken client here?
Yep.
So talking about cloud patches, if you haven't used them yet, they're a really powerful tool. We use them here internally, and it's basically a way for you to share little bits of code with someone really early in the process without the formality of committing, writing to the history of your repository and pushing that up and adding a lot of noise to the remotes that your other team members might be working on. What we're really doing is leveraging the Git patch to send that information, but streamlining it by making it easy to share. So I'm in GitKraken client right now, and I'm saying, hey, I have some file changes in my working directory. I'm going to go view those. And now I have a couple of files where I'm making some suggestions on what might be changed in here. Also maybe leaving some comments for another dev. And I might not want to push this to the repo, right? This is a kind of a conversation between me and another dev. I'm making some suggestions to them. And making some code suggestions. I want to share that with them. So we'll start the kind of Cloud Patch initiation flow here by sharing. And Cloud Patches will give you the option to kind of set some permissions. So I can make this available to anyone with the link, anyone in my GitKraken org, or only specific collaborators that I choose. This is just between me and one other person, so I'm going to make only collaborators. And now I'm going to be able to search through everyone in my organization, and these are specifically for Jordan. So I'm going to pick Jordan here, and I'm going to say, like, hey, I have some suggestions, and I could write whatever details I want in here for this, so that when Jordan gets this patch, he has some kind of idea what I'm talking about. I'm going to create that patch. And what that has done is now it shows that I've created that cloud patch. And it's showed up in my Cloud Patches section, but on Jordan's GKC, he's also going to see that, like, hey, he got a cloud patch from me that has some information in it. And when he clicks on it, it's going to show that information over here. It's going to show him what the details were of that cloud patch. It's going to show him what branch it was based off of, and some of the permissions. And he can view those changes. He can review those. And he can choose to apply those if he wants and commit those if he wants. So it's a really streamlined way, if you're already using Git patches, to do that with your team in a way that's a lot easier than downloading a file, emailing it to someone, making sure that they can email it, know what repo it goes to. There's a lot of steps involved in that process, and what we're hoping with Cloud Patches is this streamlines that flow so you can have a more collaborative experience really early on when you're just kind of passing ideas back and forth and doing things that you might not want to necessarily commit. The second use case that we've seen users use this for is basically what we call, in quotation marks, cloud stash. Stashes are something that are little works in progress that you want to save, and when you do a git stash, that will actually save them as part of that repo, but it's only on your local machine. So if you're one of these devs who likes to have a lot of threads open and you've got a lot of ideas and you're stashing them in your Git repository, that's great if you can get to them on that machine, but we hear some devs that will do that at the office and then they'll go home and they'll want to pick up on those projects. And that doesn't really translate if you haven't pushed that up to a remote. So Cloud Patches can actually be used as a cloud stash to say, hey, this is just some little bit of work that I was working on. Didn't want it to add a bunch of noise to the repository, but I want to be able to get back to it. So I can come back here and select that and get back to that work, apply it to my repo on my machine at home, and then continue on there. So if you haven't tried Cloud Patches yet, I would definitely suggest that you give it a try, give us some feedback on how it works for you, how your team might be using it, and it's something that we're in development right now on continuing to improve what these do. And the next thing that I'm going to show, which is a little bit of a peek into the future, is how we're leveraging Cloud Patches to actually improve pull request workflow. So I'm going to go into design mode here for a second and kind of show you some of the things that we're working on coming soon in the client. Really what we're trying to do is connect the dots between a branch that you have in your repo to a pull request better than we have in the past. So if you're familiar with GitKraken client, we do have the ability to see your pull request over here on the left-hand side. So if you have your client connected to a hosting service like GitHub, you'll be able to see those pull requests there. What we're wanting to add is a more intentional review process so that you can actually review this code better in the client. And this exists to some extent with the ability to do kind of a multi-commit diff and view code that way, but we're making it more intentional as part of the review process. So if you're already using pull request, you'll see some options to start a review there. We're also adding that option into places like the commit details. So if you have a commit that's on a branch and that branch is associated with a PR, we want to highlight that PR for you so that you know that, hey, all of this work here is actually related to a PR. And maybe I want to go review that. So I'll click it. And again, if you're not familiar, inside of GitKraken client, if you're using the GitHub integration, we have the ability to see the pull request details right inside of the client. So this is, getting back to reducing context switching, you can bounce around and see a lot of information in the client relevant to the pull request that you have active. So in this case, I see that there's a PR here and I want to go review those changes. So we're going to be adding a button here that just says, hey, I want to review this code. And we're going to send you into an intentional PR review mode, which is something that we haven't had in the client in a while, but it's really focused around showing you the information involved in the PR that you're looking at. So I can see that, here's some PR details here. I can see what PR it's referencing. And these are all of the files that I have changes on in that pull request. So you can just go down the list of files here, review those. And if you wanted to, go ahead and submit a review and say that this is all good. But if you have changes that you want to make on these files that are involved in this pull request, this is where we're introducing Cloud Patches as a way to have a more flexible, more powerful way to suggest changes. Something that we've heard from developers is that the GitHub interface and interfaces and other hosting services are pretty limited in their ability to allow you to make suggestions. A lot of times that involves just writing in a text box or writing some markdown and only being able to comment on the parts of the files that were already changed. But if you want to write some more complex code, if you want to make a suggestion in another part of a file or on a completely different part of a file, that's not really possible in those workflows. So by leveraging Cloud Patches, we essentially allow you to just go into a mode where you can edit this file yourself, make the changes wherever you want, make changes to other parts of the file that weren't involved in the pull request, or make changes to another file completely. And when you save those changes while you're in this PR review flow, we'll kind of build those up so that you can have a suggestion. And I'll get to how that's going to leverage Cloud Patches next. So let's say I've gone through, I've kind of made some suggestions on these files, and I was able to write them here in GKC, or if you were using GitLens, you could also do this in VS Code. But you write the code where you have the power to write code and where you have all the things that you like to have when you write, like your type aheads and your linting and everything else that comes with that. So I've got some changes. I want to suggest these on this PR, and I'm going to go into a flow that looks very similar to what I just showed in Cloud Patch Creation, except this is focused around associating that patch with a PR. So it's going to show that it's related to that PR. It's going to have those changes that I suggested. It's going to, include information from the PR so that I don't have to go get it and retype it again. And when I suggest these changes, it's going to add them to a new section in the Cloud Patches section in the left panel that says PR review suggestions. So now I know that, not only are these leveraging Cloud Patches, but there's a specific type of these now that's connected to a PR. And I can see that the PR is there, and I can review that information. But more importantly, the person who is involved with that PR will have this show up too as something that, hey, someone on my team has suggested some changes to me, and they're a little bit different than what they might have been doing in GitHub before. So if we jumped over to GitHub, what that would do is post a comment inside of the GitHub PR that says, hey, here are my suggested changes, and I'm going to give you a link to go view those. Now, what you're probably thinking is, well, my team members don't always have GitKraken client, or they don't use the same thing. Well, another powerful part of what we're doing to improve these flows is to leverage GitKraken.dev. And if you haven't heard about that, that's our browser surface that we are bringing GitKraken functionality to. So if someone sees this in their comment inside of a PR, they could click it, and now we will have the ability for that code, that patch information to be rendered inside of a browser. So that someone that might not even be using GitKraken client can come in here and say, hey, here are some changes that person made to this PR, and I'm going to accept these changes essentially and commit those changes to that repository. So just to summarize, we're building kind of a complete PR review flow that ends with the ability to make more flexible suggestions to PRs that kind of get you out of that little text box that GitHub uses or that other hosting services might use, to give you more flexibility to make more complex suggestions to a PR that just leverages patches and are easily shareable to other members of your team. Jeremy, I don't know if we want to pause for questions or if we want to just keep rolling. I know we only have 10 minutes left here.
I've got a few questions. You want me to hit them with you real quick?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So from Brenton, I'm a developer that values these tools enough to pay for it myself. The rest of the team doesn't have it. What could Cloud Patches have to add for me personally, if any? And I think you touched a little bit on this with the Cloud Stashes.
Yeah, Cloud Stashes would be that personal productivity, right? It's just a way for me to store things that I can access anywhere without having to push them up to a remote.
Awesome. Okay, next. How are the Cloud Stashes stored from Adam? In such a way, I can't see this. They can only be read by intended shared recipients, encrypted. What safeguards are in place to prevent code from being leaked due to the server being compromised?
Yeah, so there's Cloud Patches are stored on a secure AWS bucket, encrypted both directions, and the permissions for who can view them are handled by GitKraken. So people that are in your organization, we will check their permission to see if they have access to those and give them access. If you work in an organization that doesn't like that kind of stuff to be stored, we have an option for a self-hosted Cloud Patch system that would let your organization create their own storage solution, and then we would just send those to that storage solution instead, kind of removing our storage completely from the picture. So it would only be handled by your company's storage, and we would just use our authentication to make sure that someone can see one of those if you're if they are inside of your organization.
Awesome. From Mark, are there plans to add code review stuff to the GitHub Enterprise integration?
Enterprise, there's a couple of different versions of Enterprise. If this is for just cloud, then yes, this all should be there. But yeah, we're working on filling in a lot of the gaps around what you can see with pull requests and PR views inside of the client. So if this is referring to just gaps in that functionality where we don't have it yet, the answer is yes, we are wanting to get as much of that functionality in for all of our hosting providers that we have.
Awesome. And then last one for now from Jason. I might have missed it, but does this integrate with GitLab.com or self-managed yet?
For pull requests, I know we have some PR functionality in GitLab. I don't know if we have that pull request view yet, but to the question earlier and to that point, like we are trying to make these flows work in as many hosting services as we possibly can. We might be starting with GitHub and some because that's easier for us because we have the foundation there, but we recognize that people use GitLab, that people use Azure DevOps, and we want to have all of these flows work in those. So those will be following soon if they don't exist already.
Okay, great. Thanks for the awesome question, folks. Please, if you have more, drop them into the Q&A. And Justin, yeah, let's continue with the demo.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to show is focus view. So if you haven't noticed, in our last release that came out, about a week or so ago, we moved and created this new focus view tab at the top. And if you aren't familiar with what that is, focus view is a way for us to leverage the connections that you have to your integrations now, GitHub, Bitbucket, Azure, GitLab, and even Jira, and pull information about the things that are connected to your repositories, multiple repositories, into one place, so that you can prioritize work that you have, you can kind of check on the status, and then ultimately take action on those things, whether that's a work in progress that you need to actually start a pull request on or push to a remote, or an existing PR that you need to go review or even merge. This one here is kind of ready to merge. It's about pulling in information from a lot of different sources across a lot of different repositories so that you kind of have an idea of what is going on. And we pulled this out of workspaces. Previously, it was part of workspaces. You had to create a workspace to get it. But now, if you have an integration connected to GitKraken client, you can just open up this focus view tab, and there will be some information there connected to you, with the ability to kind of filter through the kind of service that you want to connect, and even just drill down into, I only want to see PRs, I only want to see issues. I even want to see my works in progress. So across all of the repositories on my machine that I have changes on, what are those? So I can jump back into those and keep working really easily. If you haven't tried this yet, I would highly suggest trying it. We're doing a lot of work right now to improve this, and I want to show where we're going with that. Related to pull request workflows, we see that a lot of developers have problems keeping track of multiple PRs that are in flight, the status of those PRs, and we try to do that in the focus view right now with a lot of metadata about what's going on. You know, if it's an open pull request, if it's waiting for some reviews, if it's failed CI, we surface that, but this is kind of a lot going on. So I'm going to shift over into design mode really quick and just show us an example of where we're going with focus. And in GKC, we want to start grouping these pull requests that are related to you as an individual in a better way. And the way we're doing that is by categorizing these pull requests into groups that make sense, that you can skim and say, what are the actual things that I need to do on all of these PRs? So this is pulling information about pull requests across multiple repositories and filtering them down based on what is important for you to do as a developer. So when we see that there are pull requests that are unassigned, or that there are conflicts that need resolving, or some that have failed CI, it's a much easier to skim this list and say, what are the things that I actually need to do? What is the most important thing for me to do right now, so that I can go dive in there and go take care of that, right? So we're reorganizing the way that pull requests get displayed in the PR section of the focus view, so that it's much more actionable and much more skimmable in a way that helps you see exactly what you need to do, and you can kind of go into merging mode, or if you're in kind of review other people's code mode, you can go expand that and collapse everything else and just kind of zero in on the things that are most important to you, including pinning things. So in our focus view, you have the ability to pin items, and so those pinned items will always show up in this pinned item group up here. So if there are things that you just don't want to lose track of, they will always be there. You'll have the links to go out and either open the branch inside of GitKraken, to go to GitHub and view that thing, or to just take the action and get that thing merged from here. So again, reducing context switching, giving you the ability to do all those things from everywhere. Where this is really surfacing in a lot of different places that if you don't know, again, I want to show something else that we have, which is the GitKraken browser extension. So let's say I'm in a PR right now. This is scoped to one specific PR, but we're working on a browser extension that will actually pull all of that information into an easily accessible list wherever you're at. So it doesn't matter if you're on GitHub or if you're on a completely different tab. By having a browser extension that can pull all of that information grouped the same way into really concise lists that you can kind of take action on, then you have a really quick jumping off point now to always know which PRs are open, have the most critical things that you need to address, and you can do it from anywhere. So it's really about exposing this information wherever we need to, so that devs have easy access to it and can figure out what the next thing is to do. And with that, I will stop sharing. I know we're getting close to our time. Are there any other questions to answer about that stuff?
All right. Seeing no further questions, want to thank everyone for attending, taking a little slice of time out of your day. Really, really appreciate it. And like I said, we'll send out the recording, and hopefully we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.